it's going to be somebody like that, in my view. It will not just be a pure martial artist who says, I have potential because I'm good looking, I can act, and I can do all these kicks. That's not going to work.
Hey guys, got a really fun video for you today. My guest, Bey Logan, really huge in the Hong Kong martial arts film world, producer, writer, sometimes actor, sometimes director even. So this discussion, can there ever be another guy like Bruce Lee or Jean-Claude Van Damme or Steven Seagal, like somebody who just becomes like really big, really popular mainstream? Well, Bey Logan seems to think so, and it's probably not how you guys think this guy will come to be, but it makes perfect sense on if this is going to happen, this is pretty much the route the person will have to take. So anyway, hope you find that enjoyable, and who knows, maybe it could be you. But please help support the channel by hitting the like button, subscribing, because I got a lot more videos with Bey Logan, a lot more with Sheldon Lettuce. You don't want to miss any of those. Share the video and make sure you get your black belt cologne, black belt fragrances. There's also a women's perfume. I'll link all the information in the description below. I'll get you a great discount. This is an amazing product. But with that said, let's get on to this discussion with Bey Logan.
It's interesting because I always say that Kung Fu cinema is the only place to really show martial art in all its manifestation in the artistic side of the martial. Because if you actually had two guys fight with swords, it wouldn't look very good, very nice, or very long when they start. You know, it'd be more like Monty Python with bits being chopped off, right? And same thing when you look at, you know, like cage matches and stuff. In terms of the artistry, there's not much to really recommend them. But in a movie, you can actually show the techniques in this very pure way that captures the art of the film. And it's unique, I think, in that the only people that are famous that do martial arts are the people that do movies. I don't think there's really been any famous martial artists or martial arts champions as famous as Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, Tony Jaa, Jean-Claude Van Damme, all the people who were kind of pretending to do martial art fights in their movies. They're not real fights, are they? You know, but the champions, but the most famous boxer is Mike Tyson, the most famous tennis player is the real Wimbledon winner, the most famous car racing. But in martial arts, the most famous people are the ones who are not actually doing it. They're the ones making movies about it. So that's interesting. So to me, it was like you take it from the position that if you're going to do film, you have to find your own. And I've often said this to people. You know, it's like if you can find your own. That's why Donnie took a long time for Donnie to become a star. He needed to find a role of his own that would define him, a style of his own. And his early career, you can see he's kind of always following, like did Drunken Tai Chi, which is following Drunken Master, and then he was doing these cop movies that are following Police Story, and then Yip Man, it was like, here's the character. You're finally old enough to play Yip Man, and here's a style, Wing Chun. We've never seen expressed like that before, and it made him a star. You need that character and that style. And it happened with Tony Jaa, right? With the first couple of films. So you need that. And I think with Tommy, I said to him the same thing. I said, if you can have a demeanor and a character, that's how Seagal broke out. That he went in there and he was like this tall, lanky, you know, American guy raised in Asia who knew Aikido, and nobody had seen Aikido used in films like that, you know.
Yeah, it looked great on film.
Right. So, I mean, that was the thing. But the key is, I think if he'd gone in there and, yeah, actually, I was one of the big surprises we all had when we started working on Attrition was how good he was at Kung Fu and how much Kung Fu he knew. And he said to me at the time that he'd always had a parallel path following the internal Chinese arts and Aikido. But when he was going to do film, he felt people had done Kung Fu had been done to death, that people had never seen Aikido. And that's why he went that route. But then by the time of, you see in his later movies, he starts doing some Kung Fu-y stuff. I really enjoyed Belly of the Beast. I think that was fun. The action in that film was fun. And then Attrition, obviously, it's all Kung Fu all the way.
Yeah, no, that was cool. That was cool. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah,
nice to see him do something different. Oh, here's one on Donnie. So this guy says, as a huge Donnie Yen and Jet Li fan, I'd love to hear your take on how insanely conditioned and trained those guys are compared to Western actors, martial artists.
Well,
I don't know if I
You know what's
fully
in,
agree, because you work with like Gary Daniels and someone like Van Damme. They're pretty damn conditioned and trained too, right? I mean, you could
well,
just tell
I
by
mean,
their physique.
Gary, I think, I don't know what sins he's punishing himself for, but Gary, like, I feel he's almost punishing himself um, when he trains. I mean, to
Really.
this day, I'm in awe of his regimen, but I don't feel it's very joyful. I always feel he's kind of almost like, punishing himself, but he maintains this incredible condition, no question.
I mean, he was a real
Um,
fighter, though, British kickboxing champ.
he
So he'd
absolutely
have to
was.
be
No,
conditioned like
absolutely.
that.
No, he did. He had an amazing run. I mean, he was kind of like a forerunner of Scott Adkins, wasn't he? A guy that came from England, came over to America, did all these movies as a lead, but
Mhm.
never quite got that break into mainstream Hollywood, which is a
It's
shame. He
true.
also, I think, could have done that, deserved it.
Do you think it was the accent though? Because that's the point I tried to
No,
make earlier, where I thought Scott might have changed his accent to sound more mainstream and appealing to
maybe.
the
I mean, there
normal
are,
audience.
there are British actors who have worked significantly in Hollywood and have done either an English accent or have learned to do a good American accent. So, it can go either which way. I
Hmm.
think that one thing that held these guys back was that the skill of um, the stunt teams to train up actors to do a lot of this stuff became such that there was a sense of like, well, why spend all that money trying to make a star out of Scott Adkins or Gary Daniels when we can take an existing bankable name, teach them martial arts, and they can look pretty good. And you get the John Wick films or the Matrix stuff with Keanu Reeves. So I think that's a lot of that. That was kind of one thing that was not in their favor. The idea that that time had passed and now we would have like actors doing it, and it's something like Taken, right, which redefined the career of Liam
Yeah, that's
Neeson.
true with Liam
When
Neeson.
you brought a guy who was a legit actor in and you taught him to do these Krav Maga moves and you came off like a badass. I mean, that was kind of, I was always frustrated because, I was, always, I said to Seagal Sensei, this is a movie that you should be doing. And then I had a script for him way before we did Attrition. It was called Shadows on the Sun, which is basically a remake of Redbeard, the Kurosawa film,
Mm.
with Seagal Sensei as like this kind of doctor working in like a kind of a rundown clinic in post-war occupation Tokyo, and about this kind of naive young naval officer who's sent there to help him and their relationship. It was a kick-out. It was such a good script. And at that time, he was very focused on, he only wanted to make movies that he himself wrote. I mean, Seagal Sensei
Yeah.
was. But that was something interesting to do. But I remember looking at Taken, and then there was another movie, The Bodyguard, that Sammo Hung film. And I don't know if you've seen that one, where he plays this older
Yeah.
guy who has like Alzheimer's,
Hmm.
but he still can do martial arts and everything. It's a really cool. It's not perfect, but it's actually got some great stuff in it. I showed that to Seagal Sensei, and I said, "You should do something like this." We had other, things I wanted to do with him, but unfortunately, yeah, just after Attrition, it was like things were happening in life, in the world, and that we just didn't move forward as a group. But I was glad I got to do that. There's a Chinese saying, "There is no banquet, has no ending." So I
Hmm.
think the banquet ended at the end of Attrition, but that's fine.
You know, one guy who did actually go mainstream, also an English guy. So obviously Gary Daniels never really, Scott Adkins, not really. Jason Statham is like the one guy because he's known for martial arts action. So
Well, it
he,
was interesting because, yeah, you say that, but he'd done Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels and Snatch and a couple of other pictures before that. And I think he did the remake of the longest yard.
so
He
you
did the
think he
remake
got
of that.
established first as an actor
Yeah,
already then?
yeah, to some degree.
Okay.
And there was like a certain amount of, wow, he's going to do action when he did the Transporter. So he was a known entity. I think what you're looking back to is the days when you got Jeff Speakman and you went, here's a guy that does Kenpo, and he's like this, whatever Dan Jeff was when he did Perfect Weapon. And he's going to do Kenpo, and he's going to blow everybody away. And by the way, he's acting as well. I think Jeff could have been a bigger star than he was.
You know what's
Uh,
funny? Somebody told me he was only a brown belt But then for the movie, he got the black belt so they could say he's a black belt.
Yeah.
Then he
Oh, yeah.
did really get it in real life too, but they kind of, you can't really market like, oh, here's a brown belt. And this, it's like, no, you got to market him as the black belt in this style.
Well, I don't
Otherwise,
know
people won't
what
take him
I don't know
serious.
what the grading requirements are in Kempo, but the Jeff Speakman I knew was black belt level in his real martial arts. No
Oh, and
question.
he's evolved Kempo. He's got like Kempo, I
Yeah.
think 5.0 or 4.0, whatever he calls it. Like
Oh,
he's
Ed
really
Parker,
taken and evolved it.
well, he's my stepfather, but I always regarded him as my father, Tino Severano, who's the father of Australian karate. He's like my mom's husband, but he's not my biological father, obviously. But Tino was the instructor of Richard Norton, who you know,
Oh, wow.
good friend of Ed Parker, who was also like my stepfather, was from Hawaii, and so they knew Jeff Speakman, this upcoming guy. But yeah, I do think that there was, even at that time, Jeff Speakman and Brian Bosworth and a few of these guys who got a movie and got a movie and got a movie, and it just didn't really ignite as a theatrical phenomenon. And then people were like, well, look, we'll get people who are already bankable, like Mel Gibson doing Lethal Weapon, right? And we'll just have them do some martial art kind of thing and put them in a movie and hype that, and that's going to work. And to some degree it did. So I think that's the trend. It's interesting, in Hong Kong, we were spoiled because almost everybody who ever became an actor here had been through the Shaw Brothers and later the TVB actor training program. So they had a really solid basis in acting, singing, kung fu, horse riding, archery, dancing, everything, which definitely the young kids in Hong Kong don't have that today. And maybe not even the ones in America, right?
Yeah.
But they had this very solid boot camp before they actually were put on camera.
So you basically don't think there's somebody that could come up these days like Seagal or Van Damme and be a big star, I guess, through strictly starting off as the martial artist and then getting into martial arts film?
I think the person to come up now would not be a Seagal who would then be tailor-made by Michael Ovitz to be the new Clint Eastwood at Warner Brothers, which is what the plan was. I think it would be somebody who came in and was almost like a kung fu fighting Quentin Tarantino or Robert Rodriguez, who came in and went, this is a movie I'm going to do, and this is how I'm going to do it. And, if you had Donnie Yen 20 years ago, because he was always an amazing choreographer, and actually he's a good director as well. He just hasn't directed in recent years. But if you go back and look at Legend of the Wolf and Ballistic Kiss, they both show enormous promise. I wrote Ballistic Kiss, but that's not why I think it's good. Okay. He's a really talented director. So he come in and you go, here's a guy, and it's going to be like this, and I'm going to be starring in it, but the action is going to be like that. When we did, we didn't do it, he did it, Legend of the Wolf, Francis Ford Coppola just formed a company called Chrome Dragon, and they were looking for guys to make movies with in Hong Kong. And I staged a screening for all the American executives, and they went to watch the film, and Donnie showed up, who directed Legend of the Wolf, and he's wearing like a baseball cap, and he had stubble and glasses, and he looked kind of skinny, he's wearing a jacket, whatever. And they watched the movie, and in the movie you see this guy on the screen because it's Donnie and the fighting guy with all the muscles and the kicking and everything. And they loved the film with reason. It's a really nicely made movie. And afterwards they all turned around and said, this is great, you're an amazing director. When can we meet the leading guy? And Donnie was, well, that was me. And they were like, it was like Clark Kent, revealing he's Superman. So I think the guy who might turn stuff around, I like those guys from Martial Club that I was talking about, who I'm a big fan of. They're going to come in. The guy's not going to come in and say, look at me, I can do 15 kicks in the air. Please, Mr. Logan or whoever, turn me into a star. The guy's going to come in and say, I've got the script and I've already shot some stuff and it's going to be like this and I'm going to star in it. And this is the guy or I'm directing it myself and whatever. And it'll be more, isn't that the way things are going? That young people are so, got it together and holistic, and they've got that whole thing. And the fashion will be like that, and the music's going to be like that. It's going to be somebody like that, in my view. It will not just be a pure martial artist who says, I have potential because I'm good looking, I can act, and I can do all these kicks. That's not going to work. They have to come in with a vision for what kind of movie are they going to make?
No, that makes sense. I kind of feel like it'll kind of have to be like the Stallone type thing where the guy would have to write it himself. And no,
Hmm.
obviously he didn't direct the
And
first
do what
Rocky, but he
Stallone did and
did the
turn
second one.
down all of the offers that other people star in the movie and say, "Hey, I'm doing it. I wrote it for me, and I'm going to star in it," which I thought took extraordinary courage. You know,
Yeah, he had like no money
take
in
the
the
money
bank
and
at the
run.
time, so it's not like he didn't need the money. He needed the money quite a bit.
Yeah.
But
Well,
yeah, I mean,
I
that'll probably be
mean,
the next breakout star.
if anybody hearing your this podcast, you know, believes that they meet the criteria that I just described, then give me a call. I mean, I'm definitely. I mean, the thing is, I'm happy to be involved as a writer and producer with people, and I'm also happy just to be involved behind the scenes to collaborate with somebody, and that's part of why I have like a facility that we have here in Hong Kong, which is like a multimedia center where it's my film company. We have different kung fu instructors, 4 different instructors teaching, you know, every week. We have people coming and painting and doing music and drama rehearsal and other writers coming in. And it's like, somebody once said, it's really interesting. There was a guy in England, I can't remember his name now. He said to me that I was like the Andy Warhol of martial arts. And I thought, I mean, obviously I admire Warhol and the factory and that whole era. But then when I look at our place, I'm thinking it is like the Kung Fu version of Andy Warhol's The Factory, because it's like a creative hub. But really, the central DNA of it is martial culture, whether it's the films, the posters, the books, the Kung Fu lessons, right? Everything that's going on there. So, yeah, it's a good base for somebody to come in and say, you know, I want to do this and I'm going to be based out of your space. And I'm kind of waiting for that person to show up. So,
Hey, where speaking of which, like, where can people follow you, like either on social media or
well, I
anywhere
don't
else?
have, I think social media is like a double-edged sword. I mean, right now I'm active to some degree on Facebook as myself, with Martial Club, with Real East. Um, Bey Logan is my name, so that's kind of like I've got my own Facebook for that. And then I've got Real East, which is our memorabilia um, marketing company. And also we use that to sell the Zoom Kung Fu webinar classes and things that we do. And then Martial Club is actually the school itself. And people can reach me at Bey, B-E-Y, at Realeast, REELEAST.com. And I'm really, you know, I'm not at all proud. Anybody can reach out to me if they're polite. I'm happy to talk to them, happy to help them. I don't do I don't do Twitter. I don't do any of that stuff. Instagram, minimally.
Or I wonder if my audience, I'm almost wondering, because I know a lot of them are into movies and oh, I want to be in movies. Like
Yeah,
who doesn't, right? But I almost
right.
wonder if your box is going to get flooded. Oh, I want to be. Here's my movie script. Here's my idea.
Fine.
Since you're going to open the floodgates, man. But it's
I'll tell
cool.
you,
It's cool.
you know, I'll tell you a true thing, Dave, that um, you meet no end of good-looking actors, you see action show reels, you see credible short films, but feature scripts, really well written, well executed scripts, there's just gold dust. It's so rare. I mean, I have to say that. And you know, I think I'm a decent writer, but I'm ready to be blown away by somebody the way that, you know, listen to how Quentin Tarantino made a name for himself. He wasn't particularly articulate in person at that time, didn't have any track record, but he wrote a killer script with Reservoir Dogs. So if somebody sent me the Kung Fu Reservoir Dogs, I'd be like, whoa, you know, that's
No, I
great.
agree. I agree. I actually majored in screenwriting in college. Got a degree in that and editing, but and I used to work at the script library at school. And just going over the scripts, it's like, wow, these are garbage. I mean, you usually know in the first couple pages, but really the first 10, right? But it's just
Mm.
like, and I would read the films that I know were good and read the script. I'm like, I know why they made this movie. This is just such a good read, but just so many other scripts, you're just like, I agree with
No,
you,
I
man. It's
remember. I
rare.
even remember reading a pile of stuff that was sent to me, and I think Brett had sent me Rush Hour 3 script to read, and just reading the other stuff and the other stuff. And then you start reading Rush Hour 3. And I'm not saying Rush Hour 3 was a masterpiece by any means, but it was just so. It was a studio script, and it was so above the level of the other stuff that I was being sent. So I
Sure.
mean, my advice, if people are going to flood my inbox, is I'll be polite and supportive as best I can. But the best way to get my attention would be to say, I've got this kick-ass script. If we can make this movie with the right direction, the right cast, it's going to set the world on fire. Like we did with Furies. I mean, which we're going to see. You're all going to find out next year. But if I could see that would be something really that would make me go, wow, I want to get behind this and push. Because even the people I know or the resources I have, their first question would be, okay, well, what's the script? Because people have learned. They've learned the lesson. They've learned that signing a name actor, having Bruce Willis for 4 days, having special effects and shooting in remote locations will not save you if you don't have a good script for your movie. So that's the first step. And I always say to people, I say, if you don't know, if you yourself cannot write a script, find somebody who can and partner with them.
Yeah, that'll motivate people to get, start writing something good,
It's
hopefully.
easier than ever. I mean, I remember when I started out, I was having to I was on a typewriter and you like writing in kind of like description
I
dialogue.
couldn't imagine that, man. Now you could just buy
Now you
Final
have the
Draft and have
software that
everything
almost
formatted.
writes the damn thing for you, right?
Yeah. Hopefully, maybe this video will motivate some of you guys. I know a lot of you guys probably have some pretty cool movie ideas, but if you want to write a script, what I highly recommend, get the book called Screenplay from Sid Field. It's the foundations of screenwriting because at the end of the day, every good script has a certain structure, a certain blueprint, a certain way it's put together. Anybody reading your script will know right away whether you actually look like you know what you're doing or you don't, and that first impression is huge. So ideally you want it to look like, even if you've never written anything, you don't want it to come across as a guy who's never written anything. So get that book. I'll link it in the description below. You could pick it up from Amazon. You could probably read it in about a week. Doesn't cost that much, but it's highly recommended. And with that said, maybe you'll get one of your movies made someday. If you do, I'd love to cover it on the channel. Let me know, man, because it'd be pretty exciting.